Ever heard of the first European to set foot in America? If you're thinking Christopher Columbus, you're about 500 years too late. Let's talk about the real trailblazer, a Viking explorer whose incredible journey has been overshadowed by history for far too long. His name was Leif Erikson, and his story is a saga of courage, chance, and the untamed spirit of the North. Our story begins around the year 1000. While much of Europe was deep in the Middle Ages, the Vikings, or Norsemen, were the masters of the sea. They were raiders, yes, but they were also traders, settlers, and peerless explorers. From their Scandinavian homelands, they had already pushed the boundaries of the known world, settling in Iceland, and then, under the leadership of Leif's own father, Eric the Red, establishing a colony on the icy shores of Greenland. Leif Erikson was born into this world of adventure. He grew up hearing tales of distant lands and the call of the open ocean. He wasn't just the son of a famous explorer, he was destined to become one himself. But his journey to America wasn't part of some grand royal-funded expedition. It happened almost by accident, a twist of fate born from another man's story. That man was Bjorni Herjolfsson, a merchant sea captain. Years before Leif's famous voyage, Bjorni was sailing from Iceland to join his family in Greenland. But a fierce storm blew his ship wildly off course. For days, he was lost in a thick fog. When the skies finally cleared, Bjarni and his crew saw land. But it wasn't the rugged, glacier-covered landscape of Greenland they expected. It was a coastline covered in gentle hills and dense forests. Intrigued but determined to reach his destination, Bjorni didn't go ashore. He sailed north along this mysterious coast, noting two more distinct landmasses before finally finding his way to Greenland. When he arrived, his story of an unknown wooded land to the west became the talk of the settlement. People were fascinated, but for years no one acted on it. The tale simmered, waiting for someone with enough ambition to follow the trail. That someone was Leif Erikson. Around the year 1001, Leif, now a grown man, with a reputation for being wise and level-headed, bought Bjorni's ship. He gathered a crew of 35 hardy men and set out to retrace Bjorni's route, but in reverse. He was determined not just to see these new lands, but to explore them. Following Bjorni's descriptions, Leif sailed west from Greenland. The first land they encountered was a desolate place, covered in flat, barren rock slabs. Leif named it Helgeland, which means land of the flat stones. Historians today believe this was likely Baffin Island in modern-day Canada. It wasn't a welcoming place, so they didn't linger. They pushed on. Sailing south, they came to a second land. This one was flat and heavily forested, with white sandy beaches. Leif named it Markland, or Land of Forests. This is thought to be the coast of Labrador. This land was promising, rich with timber, a resource desperately needed back in Greenland. But Leif sensed there was something even better further south. His journey wasn't over yet. They continued their voyage, and after 2 more days at sea, they found what they were looking for. They sailed into a sheltered bay where a river flowed out to the sea. The landscape was unlike anything they had ever seen. The rivers were teeming with salmon larger than any they had caught before. The climate was mild, so mild that the grass remained green even in winter. Most astonishingly, they found wild grapes growing in abundance. 4 men from the harsh, cold north. This was a paradise. Grapes meant wine, a luxury in the Viking world. Thrilled by this discovery, Leif named the area Vinland, the land of wine. They decided to stay for the winter. They built a small settlement, a collection of longhouses and workshops, to serve as their base for exploring the surrounding region. They spent their days cutting timber, gathering grapes, and scouting the new territory. This wasn't just a brief landing, it was a settlement. Archaeological evidence has proven it. In the 1960s, a team of archaeologists discovered the remains of a Norse settlement at a place called Lonsö Meadows on the northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada. They unearthed Viking-style turf houses, a smithy for ironworking, and artifacts like a bronze cloak pin and a soapstone spindle whorl. This discovery was the smoking gun. It proved that the Viking sagas, the epic oral histories that told of Leif's journey, weren't just myths, they were history. After a winter in Vinland, Leif Erikson and his crew loaded their ship with timber and grapes and sailed back to Greenland. His return with proof of a bountiful new land caused a sensation. He earned the nickname Leif, the Lucky, for his incredible discovery and the profitable cargo he brought back. Inspired by Leif's success, other Norse Greenlanders attempted to follow in his footsteps. His brother Thorvald led the next expedition. Unfortunately, his ended in tragedy. The sagas tell us that Thorvald's group had the first recorded encounter between Europeans and the indigenous people of North America, whom the Norse called Sret. This initial contact turned violent, and Thorvald was killed in the conflict, becoming the first European to die and be buried in America. Other voyages followed, including a major colonization attempt led by an Icelandic merchant named Thorfinn Karlsefni. He brought families, livestock, and the intention to build a permanent settlement in Vinland. For a few years, they tried to make a new life there. They traded with the native peoples but also clashed with them. The sagas describe the birth of a child named Snorri, the first European born in the Americas. So why didn't these Viking settlements last? Why did this incredible chapter of history fade into obscurity? The reasons are complex. The Norse settlements in Greenland were already struggling. The climate was getting colder, making farming and survival increasingly difficult. The distance to Vinland was vast, and the journeys were perilous. But the biggest challenge was the relationship with the indigenous peoples. The Norse were few in number, thousands of miles from any significant backup. They were vastly outnumbered by the native populations who had lived on the continent for millennia. The constant friction and conflict made long-term settlement unsustainable and dangerous. After just a few years, the Vikings abandoned their American dream and sailed back to Greenland. And so, the memory of Vinland faded. The stories were preserved in the Icelandic sagas, but for centuries, most of the world dismissed them as folklore. Meanwhile, Christopher Columbus sailed in 1492, backed by the power and resources of the Spanish crown. His arrival triggered a permanent and transformative wave of European colonization, forever changing the course of world history. Columbus got the credit, and Leif Erikson became a footnote. But in recent decades, thanks to the archaeological proof at Lonzo Meadows and a renewed interest in Viking history, Leif's story is finally being told. We now know that the Vikings were the true European pioneers of America. Their journey wasn't about conquest or empire. It was a story of exploration, of a handful of brave seafarers pushing the limits of their world and accidentally stumbling upon a new one. Leif Erikson's saga is a powerful reminder that history is often more complex and surprising than the version we learn in school. It's a story of incredible skill, courage, and a bit of luck, a forgotten voyage that proves the age of discovery began not with a caravan of Spanish ships, but with a single Viking longship, guided by the stars and the unyielding spirit of adventure. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this forgotten piece of history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments what other historical mysteries you'd like to see uncovered. See you next time.